communities that put emphasis on it now are much further ahead than the communities that just simply quote, they are going to do it in the future.
Welcome to episode 363 of the Community Broadband Bits podcast from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I'm Lisa Gonzalez. Mountain Connect is one of Christopher's favorite events. He and other experts, advocates, and professionals gather together in Colorado in the summers. And if he's lucky, Christopher can record a few interviews for the podcast. This week, we're sharing his conversation with Brian Worthen, CEO of Mammoth Networks. Brian and Christopher discuss the different services Mammoth offers and some of the discoveries they've made about operating in sparsely populated places where the geography varies. They also discuss some of the projects that Mammoth has been working on, including Project Thor, which will connect existing and new fiber in northwest Colorado for better connectivity in the region. Other topics the guys discuss include federal versus local rural broadband efforts, Connect America funding, utilities and cooperatives, and low Earth orbit satellites. Here's Christopher with Mammoth Network's Brian Worthen, recorded in Dillon, Colorado at 2019's Mountain Connect.
Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and today I'm talking to Brian Worthen with Mammoth Networks.
Yes, that's correct, Chris.
That was a question because all of a sudden I just think of you as Mammoth. And I know that you're not a muffin from Perkins. So. Mammoth Networks. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You come out of Wyoming, but you're spread out on a lot of the West, it seems like. So just give us a sense of what Mammoth does.
Mammoth is a wholesaler to other ISPs. It's WISPs, CLECs, small cable companies, small phone companies. We've actually carved out this niche over the last 10 years, helping people navigate the rural broadband market. They've been in a position where there's a slight amount of competition, but they haven't had access, our customers haven't had access to affordable backhaul options to major peering points, to peer with Netflix or Apple or Microsoft, and they've been limited in choices. And so we've been working for the last 10 years to expand on those choices, most often actually leasing our customers' underlying transport from multiple entities and piecing that together in sort of a patchwork quilt type environment.
And so do you do any last mile services yourself in any situations?
Yeah, we actually grew up in Wyoming, and we started with 5 dial-up lines in the basement, and so we embraced DSL and wireless in 2000. So we developed both those platforms at the same time. And what's interesting about that is it's forced us to be agnostic with regards to the technology, and we've always looked at that as a benefit in the past. Now the impetus is more towards fiber and less emphasis on copper. But it's still, in our eyes, it's still a hybrid solution in rural America where there's fiber in the core or the business corridor and wireless serving the county area.
Now, when you're doing these long haul or the middle mile networks, you're using a combination of technologies, right?
Yeah, we're utilizing utility fiber. We're using Department of Transportation fiber, pieces that have been laid before by other CLECs. And obviously the phone company fiber that was funded years and years ago and that exists in the ground.
So what are the prices like in Wyoming? Are you able to be cost competitive with, the sort of more metro areas or suburban areas in terms of those long haul prices?
I think in Wyoming and in all rural markets, there's actually an issue with the amount of customer base you can put on a network, and so you cannot focus on businesses or residential, especially in Wyoming with less than 600,000 people. We have to take all types of business, oil field, coal mines, the downtown business districts, residential, and we're having to use a combination of fiber, wireless, copper, anything we can do to reach out to that customer. And without that entire customer base, rural America can't actually stand on its own.
Right. So one of the networks that we've been fascinated by, and we're going to have an upcoming episode talking to, is Rio Blanco, in the northwest part of Colorado, quite rural. You've been involved with that project, first providing backhaul, you said. So tell us what you're doing in that situation.
Yeah, in Colorado, there's a really interesting phenomenon going on where municipalities and cities, counties are getting into the broadband game. And Rio Blanco is interesting because they hired us to handle their backhaul, and we built the route diverse network through Rio Blanco County to serve them with backbone. And the take rate in that county has far exceeded anything that Google experienced or a number of providers have experienced. And I think a lot of that because of the size of the communities. The word got out. There was a need for everyone to participate, and they did.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, my understanding was they forecast, like 35, 40%, and they had 80%-ish in the first year.
Yeah, they achieved 80% take rate really quickly.
That's unheard of.
That's right.
That's right. And so it's a good thing you guys were there to be able to make sure they could haul all that out to major internet exchange points.
Yeah, we're excited to be a part of that project. The fact that we can take them to major peering points and hand them Netflix and Apple and Microsoft and other peers was really beneficial to the community, and it gave us a win as well, to be involved with that.
What does it mean to do that in terms of connecting? If we just use that as an example, or if there's a better example that you'd like to use, what do you have to do in order to get fiber or some sort of high quality pipe effectively? It might be a wireless solution, but something to get to them. Do you just sit down with a map and GIS layers and look at where you can lease fiber? Do you start building it all? I mean, were you already very close to them? Like, how do you go about doing that?
Mammoth has been beneficial on a number of fronts for us in understanding the wholesale landscape. We still have this retail operation in Wyoming. But Mammoth has given us an ability to understand more of what's going on in the American West. And over the years, we've not only picked up knowledge from employees of other companies. We have people on staff that used to service the old Touch America network in Montana. We have people on staff that understood Colorado rather well. And so when we put all of our heads together, we started mapping out this fiber infrastructure that really is unmapped. And the larger entities, or what's been known as the larger ISPs, that because it's such a competitive environment between telco and cable, these aren't published. But we've been able to piece that together with just logic, and sometimes we have to order and trial and error. But we've made a map of the Rockies of what's good for redundancy and what routes exist. And it's shocking how much there actually is in the ground that's underutilized. We've been surprised by that.
So when you actually have to build, are you able to get on poles, or are you mostly going underground? What do you have to look at and to get this done?
We're pivoting again this year. I think this is our sixth pivot since 1994.
A couple more in the NBA might accuse you of taking out travel.
That's right. That's what keeps us young and keeps us challenged and makes work interesting. But we're on our sixth pivot this year. 3 or 4 years ago, we just had 3 or 4 trucks in the field, and now we have 30 bucket trucks. We have splicing trailers and whatnot. And right now we're going through this process, and we have for the last 18 months of working on right-of-way, easement, franchise agreements, and whatnot. So we're just now getting to the point where we're going to be building more fiber, not only in a last mile, but in a middle mile format.
So I think most people think of Wyoming, they think of the Grand Tetons, they think mountain passes. What is it actually like building in Wyoming, though? Is it just a mixture of things, or is there a predominant way that you construct?
Wyoming's a mixture. In the northwest corner, you have the Tetons and Yellowstone, and it's very mountainous and high elevation. In the southwest, it's desert, high desert, and in the east, it's rolling plains and it's high country. So actually, it's not too bad to build. Especially to build wireless and then to build fiber. And Wyoming's accommodated fiber builds rather well. They opened up WYDOT right away for fiber builders, and they came up with a concept where the conduit could be shared or subleased out from the original build. So they're keeping the right-of-way clean, but allowing for fiber expansion, which ultimately translates into cellular expansion, wireless broadband expansion. But the terrain is really similar to Colorado. Colorado has 2 different types of terrain. There's mountains, and then there's the plains to the east. And so Colorado's like that, northern New Mexico, southeast Montana. So these are good places to build. With our efforts in the western slope of Colorado, we're seeing more challenging terrain, and we've started adopting more technologies such as LTE, EBS, CBRS, and deploying technologies that penetrate tree coverage and deliver service in very mountainous regions.
So I want to switch to talking about the word utility, which for some ISPs makes them nervous. Everyone has a different, I think, definition of what it means. But you've given this a lot of thought over the years. And so I'm curious, when I say the word utility in relation to broadband internet access, what do you think of?
Utilities are just now getting into the broadband game. Longmont was a good example. They built that fiber network in Colorado, Longmont, Colorado, using their own utility lines and access to their poles. You're seeing a transformation right now because utilities are seeing this as a cooperative effort. Broadband is a cooperative effort. Just like power was back in the day, or water, or my brother in his neighborhood just 3 or 4 years ago, he and his neighbors got together and built their own gas line to meet the gas company. Before that, they were on propane. So
Right.
This co-op exists, this cooperative effort still exists. And what I believe is the utilities are now looking at broadband as a way to not only monitor their substations, monitor meters, but deliver to their co-op members, because their members are frustrated, just like most of rural America is frustrated. There's not a lot of investment from the telco. The cable companies would rather spend time in the Denvers and Seattles and Phoenixes of the world or of the nation. But the bottom line is the rural communities, because most utilities are co-op, their members are asking for their help. Just like in some communities, their constituents are asking for them to get into that game. And so I actually believe, when we talked last year, I believe utilities had a big play, and that's mostly because the USDA and RUS programs provide 20-year lending to utilities. To compete with a company that has 20-year lending, I can borrow on a 3-year, a 5-year, a 10-year span, but that's a different ballgame altogether. And so they do have a unique advantage right now because they have poles. Easements are obviously an issue where they don't have a utility easement, they only have a power easement, but some states are changing that. Indiana's changing that. Colorado just introduced legislation to change that. So I think there's going to be a turning point here shortly where utilities are getting more in the game, or and we've had a number of discussions with utilities lately where they partner with someone like us to power the network. And after all, they're a power company. IP, change management, notifications, cell phone providers being on the network, that's a different ballgame. And so I could see a number of utilities either getting into that arena or partnering with someone like us.
So let me ask you this, as someone, this is totally coming out of left field. I never know if I should say left field or right field. It's coming from far away, though. You have a really good sense, I think, of not only what's happening out there and how in some areas there's good service. In many areas we need a lot of investment in places like Wyoming and in the rural parts of Wyoming. And I think there's a lot of expectation that in 2020 we're going to see a lot of candidates running on this, on broadband, because it's a popular issue to at least talk about. I have kind of a counterintuitive reaction that a lot of the people that I admire, I think, would disagree with, which is like, I feel like Wyoming just set up a pretty good program that I think you like for how they're getting some of the funds out there. They're taking it seriously. Most states are investing, I think, too little, but states are investing more. I don't know that we need the federal government to try to figure out how to create whole new departments or figuring out a massive new programs. I'd like to see the candidates in 2020 fixing other problems that only the federal government can deal with, because I think the utilities, the states, can take a big chunk out of this problem. What do you think about? Do you think I'm crazy?
I think you're spot on, and I actually think it's more local than that. So there's a city effort, there's a county effort, there's a state effort, and a federal. The federal effort, the mapping is a problem. We're funding programs like CAF2 was just funded for areas of the country, and we actually bid 5 different counties in Wyoming, and we served in most of those counties almost 80% on average, and there's some blocks we served 100% of.
You mean before that auction?
Before the auction,
before the Connect America Fund
ultimately
auction, yeah.
The U.S. government is funding areas where there actually is broadband, and these are areas where we provide 50 and 100 meg services already wirelessly, 15 miles out of town. And it was frustrating to watch because of the mapping. And the most frustrating part about that is providers like us send in accurate maps to within 3 feet, right? It's all GPS coordinates, twice a year. And so that information obviously is getting distorted or is stale. And so funding additional federal programs, I don't think is the answer. And I think it's actually a hyper-local type answer. The involvement with the local community and partnering with them in such a way to get access to right of way, everybody gets the same agreement. I'm not saying there's some uniqueness there, but in the end, the providers of broadband in the future are going to be 4 different types of companies. They're going to be a cable company that actually wants to spend money in the local market. They're going to be a utility. They're going to be a city or municipality, or they're going to be a competitive provider like us. And it'll be some mixture of those. The phone company will be out of that. You're starting to see the phone companies sell off their exchanges. But it involves hyper-local communication, collaboration. Some cities are utilities, therefore you can have access to their poles. Some cities really are beholden or supportive of their local cable provider. And so the broadband of the future is going to be controlled at a local level in the collaborative environment, and the cities and counties will be a huge part of that, a huge driver for that. And in some cases, the larger the community, there's going to be some more lobbying for retention of this duopoly that exists. But I think that funding is going to happen at even a local level, not just a state level. There's a lot of states putting funds together to fund broadband where none exists. We just went into Ophir, Colorado. We pulled a 1 gig circuit into Ophir, and they did it. The community actually opted to do a 2 mile fiber build in from this fiber line. And so this is a community of 70 homes, no gas station, no grocery store, and it's really mind blowing to think there's communities like that still exist. And those communities are being overlooked at the federal level, but the state level they're being funded in Wyoming, Colorado, and others.
Yeah, I have to say that part of my reaction, I feel like if this was a period of like the 70s and 80s where interest rates were really high and you couldn't, like local governments and states couldn't borrow at reasonable rates to set up these programs, then it might be different. Then you look to the federal government. Right now, I feel like there's ways. I mean, in Minnesota, we've seen counties that are working with local providers, often cooperatives, to extend their networks from the neighboring county over into theirs. And the cost is quite expensive for a county that has 7,000 people in it. Bonding for a few $1 million to expand broadband is a major deal, but they're able to do it.
Right. And they're putting importance on it. That's the big thing.
I think the key. Yeah, exactly. I just feel like there's so many people who are like, this is so important, we need the federal government to do it. And the reaction should be, this is so important, we can do it without like having to worry about how the federal government might get it wrong, all the incredible paperwork one has to go through to access that money.
Right.
There's just, I feel like there's all kinds of challenges, and I'm not in a knee-jerk, well, I'm a little bit of a knee-jerk anti-federal government kind of person, but I just feel like, there's so many things that only Washington can deal with trying to heal and fix in this country, and it should be focused on those. And I'm worried that states feel like they're just looking to the federal government to do it for them when they could be doing things themselves.
I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in at a city or a county or a state level where I hear the word "they are going to do this," and I ask, who are they? There's 2 crowds in the broadband world. There's the crowd that says we're just going to build this and roll up their sleeves and do it. And then there's another crowd, and they're composed of the uneducated rural markets that assume somebody out there is vying for that, is wanting to create a business or a broadband plant in their community. And actually, broadband in rural America is going to be a hedge against urbanization, and it's going to be focused on farming, first responders, the most rural of businesses that have to be in those locations. And communities that put emphasis on it now are much further ahead than the communities that just simply quote, they are going to do it in the future.
So what's changed in the last year or two that kind of blows your mind? If you look back to our conversation a year ago, which was very focused on utilities, and for people who are wondering, it was a conversation you and I had, and it wasn't recorded, unfortunately. So, but we talked about a number of these issues, and I'm curious, has anything popped up that surprises you going in a direction you didn't expect?
I think there's a couple things. One is the advent and introduction of millimeter wave. It's huge. There's this whole 5G umbrella that covers so many different technologies, but the actual technology around millimeter wave in the 60 to 80 gigahertz range is allowing us to feed wireless towers 15 miles out of town, 5 miles out of town with high bandwidth. And
I thought those ranges didn't work on those. So this is where I get a little bit confused. I mean, at that point, I thought you had to deal with the waves were so small. Are you just able to amplify it at such an extent?
Regenerate. It's like fiber, right? Okay. In the end, you regenerate it. We've got some microwave shots up from Rock Springs to Pinedale that are 60 miles using licensed frequencies in the 11 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz range.
Right, but those aren't using millimeter waves, are they?
No. No. I'm thinking of one tower specifically. It's actually 15 miles east of my office, and we bought an easement on a private landowner's plot, and we put up a tower. And at night, I think it pumps 1.6 gigs to the internet at peak. So it's a very rural area and purely residential housing, and it's got that kind of traffic. Well, I can't backhaul that with traditional licensed microwave, and so I've actually found a high point within 3.25 miles to that specific tower, and we're feeding that with 10 gigs synchronous. So it's fiber-like speeds over a millimeter wave, and that technology has just come into play in the last 12 months.
So when we talk about 5G and the challenges, and a lot of us are talking about how like the way the 5G small cells are set up in suburban neighborhoods and things like that, it really only goes like hundreds of feet. Is that a different wavelength, or is that a power issue?
It's a multi-point issue, and it's also the nature of the wavelength itself. And so you're going to see millimeter wave in a downtown environment or along a street in a multi-point configuration lasting no more than an eighth of a mile. It's just the nature of the beast. And so the fact that so many communities are now looking at this, that's another big change. So many FCC's addressed that with their small cell order, but so many communities are actually enacting ordinances because they've not been prepared for this. There's going to be a wave of small cells that are on literally every block throughout the community, and it's going to feed cellular, it's going to feed data to the surrounding areas, it's going to feed other towers. That's what wireless is now, is cell towers feeding other cell towers. There's 1 out of 5 that are fiber fed, and the other 4 come off that tower. There's this daisy chain effect, but in order to achieve that with millimeter wave, your point to point is a 3.25 mile maybe, and then your multi-point is simply limited to an eighth of a mile max.
Okay. The last question that I have that I feel like is the biggest challenge for me on wireless solutions is I feel like it cannot be a carrier of last resort, because there's always people who are in an inconvenient location relative to the tower and cannot get service. And the question in my mind is the alternative, if we're going to embrace that technology as the main technology for an area, do we just say that those houses' value will go to zero and those people will move? Or am I underestimating the ability of wireless to ultimately serve 100% of people in a given area? I
think fixed wireless broadband, which is what I assume you're talking
That's
about,
right, yeah.
is highly evolved at this point, but it's only going to get better. Of course, in this world, everything is fiber first, but you cannot build fiber to every farmhouse. I visited someone in Kansas recently and saw them doing just that at $70 a month.
15 years, 20 years?
We could, but I view wireless in our company. Within our company, we view wireless as a stopgap until fiber technologies get cheaper, right away gets easier to access, and easements are perfected. And so it's a great stopgap solution for rural America.
But you do see it then able to, over time. I mean, it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that, because 5 years ago I was a skeptic. I mean, at that point, I would say most people's interactions with WISPs were the kind of WISPs who were well-meaning people who were a bit technical and put up something to try and solve a problem and then expanded perhaps beyond their capacity. And so people often associate with WISPs a sense of, it's going to be less than a megabit, it's going to be unreliable. That is not the situation for a lot of WISPs today, particularly ones that have a reputation like yours, like VistaBeam, NetBlazer, Starry. There's all obviously in San Francisco, Monkey Brains I've written a lot about. So it's not surprising to hear you say that. I still sort of wonder about the ability for it to hit that person on the wrong side of the hill.
Yeah, there's always going to be that challenge, because the person wants to live on that side of the hill, and there's a certain quality of life associated with that. And broadband is a necessity, but these are the same folks that have overhead power lines, and so sooner or later they'll have overhead fiber into their location, even if it can't be trenched in at the cost of trenching or underground. The fact of the matter is, there's people placing their homes where they want to live. And there's a certain rural residential market that wants acreage. They want to be spread out. And fiber to the home in those situations is not readily available now. It will be. But in our view, the towers of the future will feed these customers until fiber gets there. And so you've got a fiber-fed tower along a main county road that can feed customers 15 miles both directions. And you're going to see in the next 24 months, gigabit speeds over wireless. It's going to happen.
Okay.
It just requires more towers.
I want to ask you about low Earth orbit satellites. And I'm curious, is the worst case scenario that low Earth orbit satellites are basically good enough to kind of fracture the market to make it harder for you to get the take rates you need to be able to make these investments, but it's not good enough to solve the problem for everyone? Is that a potential scenario here coming out?
I want to talk about that in a second, but I want to go actually back to your last question.
Sure.
I've seen something interesting in wireless in the last 12 months. You talked about wireless providers being questionable or the market not trusting them because of past performance. And that's because wireless providers traditionally have been paging guys, two-way radio guys. They've not been internet providers. And so for us to offer wireless is actually interesting because there's a lot of providers out there that are just now starting up wireless ISPs with no IP knowledge, no technical knowledge. They're tower companies. They own structures, and they're doing it because their neighbors want that. And so there's actually not a lot of fixed wireless ISPs that are of size. But the most interesting thing to me in the last year in the wireless space is, in addition to millimeter wave, is the fact that small telcos are getting in that space, and so are utilities.
Right.
So for those companies to start adopting fixed wireless technology, they're realizing the power of reaching out into rural markets.
Absolutely, and it's the same philosophy in many ways from what you were mentioning earlier in terms of seeing it as we're not going to do this forever, perhaps. We're going to reevaluate maybe after 5 years.
Right.
So, low Earth orbit satellites.
I think low Earth orbit satellites have potential to disrupt the market. We're just now seeing in the wireless world people moving off satellite or Wild Blue or other, Hughes or other technologies.
Yeah, the big fixed geostationary satellites.
Where they are paying a fixed fee per month and then overages, which in an environment where you're watching all your content online and potentially in the near future gaming online, that's not a long-term viable solution. Satellite communications where there's charges for overages. This low Earth solution with that number of satellites has a lot of potential to disrupt the market, but their pricing plan has to be fixed. And it has to be heavy download. If it's not going to change the market. But it has a potential to better serve rural America, which there's guys like us trying to do our best in rural America, funding stuff out of our own pocket. And there's 4,000 WISPs in the U.S. There's a number of people working towards that end, and that market's going to be disrupted. There's security, there's latency, and then there's the fact that this satellite technology may actually delve into the old model of charging for overages or charging for too much bandwidth, and that remains to be seen.
I just realized that I meant to start this off by asking you about the award that you were just a part of winning with Project Thor. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Project Thor and the award that Jeff Glavinsky and Mountain Connect just bestowed upon you?
Yeah, I was excited about that. It was a surprise. As a provider, especially a private provider, we in the past have focused on profit and using that profit to expand our business. And it's all about reinvestment. But we chose to participate in municipal and public-private partnerships because we could either sit on the sidelines or work together. And so our first public-private partnership was in Routt County in Steamboat, and we partnered with the city, the county, the utility, the hospital, and the school district, and worked with them to build an 8-mile fiber run. And we had diverse routes out of the community, and that was the first time that's happened. So this ski community at peak season could process credit cards no matter if one direction's down or another. And in the summertime, that's construction season, and you always worry about your fiber in construction season because they're along the highway. So we've been working in Routt County for 3 or 4 years on this project and achieved a certain level of reliability that we're very proud of. This expanded over the last 2 or 3 years into Project Thor, and so we came up with the concept of using lit services and dark services along a circular path from Denver north through Routt County down to Grand Junction and back to Denver, and involving the communities in that. And we're simply operating the network and allowing them to be an open access network where the communities then can be a provider themselves. They can choose to partner with a local provider. They can sell it to the local cable company. They have their choice in doing what they want. We're just operating the network for them. But to date, there's 9 communities that have signed up for this to operate a 100-gig ring through northern Colorado or northwest Colorado. So we're excited to be a part of the project. It's going to be a hefty amount of work over the next 12 months, but it was exciting also to see Jeff give us props during Mountain Connect this year.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I really appreciate getting caught up. I really admire the way I think that you take an all hands on board approach in recognizing that, there's a state as vast as Wyoming. We don't have to sort of just pick one solution and go with that, but that we can work together and find different ways of getting this job done.
Yeah, we view broadband in rural markets in Wyoming specifically as sprinkling. We want to sprinkle and see where the seeds sprout, and then we want to continue to feed that. So that's how we operate our business, and we think about things as affecting our neighbors or impacting our neighbors positively, and we're excited to be a part of that. When we talk about this internally, we don't talk about, hey, we provide broadband to rural America. We're helping ranchers trade cattle. We're helping firefighters fight fires. We're helping plains land. That's the way we talk about it, and that's why my staff is so excited about broadband, and they will be.
That was Brian Worthen from Mammoth Networks visiting with Christopher at the 2019 Mountain Connect Conference in Dillon, Colorado. We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle is @muninetworks. Subscribe to this podcast and the other podcasts from ILSR, Building Local Power, and the Local Energy Rules podcast. You can access them wherever you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount helps keep us going. Thank you to Arnie Huseby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons, and thank you for listening to episode 363 of the Community Broadband Bits podcast.